On the Ides of March, 44 BC, the most powerful man on earth walked into the theatre of Pompey. He sat on a golden chair. Suddenly, he was surrounded, not by enemies from a foreign land, but by his friends, his colleagues, men he had forgiven, men he had promoted. In seconds, the air was filled with the flash of steel. 23 stab wounds later, Julius Caesar lay dead on the marble floor, his blood staining the white toga. Why start with his death? Because to understand the psychology of Julius Caesar, you must understand that he lived every single day of his life, knowing this was a possibility, and he did not care. He played the game of power with a level of risk that would give a normal man a heart attack. He was a gambler who bet his life on every roll of the dice. He is the ultimate archetype of the high-stakes strategist. Today, we are dissecting the mind of the man who ended the Roman Republic and created an empire. We will not just recite history. We will analyze his operating system. We will look at how he handled being kidnapped by pirates and why he laughed in their faces, the psychological warfare he used to starve an army of 80,000 men at Alesia, and the concept of the Rubicon, the mental point of no return. By the end of this video, you will learn how to apply the Caesarian mindset of divide and conquer to your own battles. To understand Caesar's psychology, we must look at his origin story. It is not what you expect. He was not born into absolute power. He had to seize it. The most defining moment of his youth happened when he was 25 years old. He was sailing across the Aegean Sea when his ship was hijacked by Cilician pirates. These were dangerous men who killed captives for sport. They took Caesar prisoner. They told him they would ransom him for 20 talents of silver, a huge sum of money. Most men would be terrified. Most men would beg for their lives. Caesar did something insane. He laughed at them. He told them, "You do not know who you have captured. 20 talents is an insult. Ask for 50. The pirates were confused, but they agreed. For 38 days, Caesar lived with the pirates while his men went to gather the money. He didn't act like a prisoner. He acted like their commander. He joined their games. He practiced his speeches on them. When they were too loud while he was sleeping, he sent a messenger to tell them to shut up. He joked with them, saying, "Once I am free, I will come back and crucify all of you." The pirates laughed. They thought he was a funny, arrogant boy. They were wrong. The money arrived. Caesar was released. He immediately went to the nearest port, raised a small fleet of ships with his own money, and hunted the pirates down. He found them, captured them, and took back his 50 talents. And then, true to his word, he crucified every single one of them. What does this teach us about the apex mindset? It teaches us the power of reframing reality. Even in chains, Caesar refused to accept the role of the victim. He acted like a king when he was a captive. He understood that power is not just about weapons. It is about behavior. If you act superior, people will often treat you as superior, even if they hold the gun. He imposed his reality onto the pirates until they accepted it. But Caesar's true genius was not just in his attitude, it was in his ability to divide and conquer. This is a phrase we hear often, but few understand how he actually applied it. The greatest example is the Gallic Wars. Caesar marched north into what is now France, Gaul. He was facing hundreds of disparate tribes, brave warriors, numerically superior, fighting on their home soil. If they had united, they would have crushed Rome instantly. Caesar knew this. So he never fought the Gauls. He fought the Helvetii, then the Suebi, then the Belgi. He used psychological warfare to turn the tribes against each other. He offered protection to one tribe if they attacked another. He fueled old rivalries. He made alliances only to break them when it suited him. He made sure that his enemies were always fighting two wars, one against Rome and one against their neighbors. This is the essence of strategy. Never face a united front. If you are facing a group of enemies in business, in office politics, or in life, find the cracks, find the jealousies, find the weak links, split them apart, and then devour them one by one. A united enemy is a fortress, a divided enemy is a buffet. However, the pinnacle of Caesar's military genius, and perhaps the greatest feat of engineering and psychology in history, was the Siege of Alesia. The year is 52 BC. Vercingetorix, the king of the Gauls, has finally united the tribes. He retreats to the hilltop fortress of Alesia, with 80,000 soldiers. Caesar arrives with 60,000 men. But there is a problem. Alesia is on a high hill, heavily fortified. A direct attack is suicide. Caesar decides to starve them out. He orders his men to build a wall around the entire city 11 miles long, towers, trenches, spikes. It is a marvel of engineering. But then, Caesar receives terrifying news. A relief army of Gauls' 250,000 warriors is marching to attack Caesar from behind. He is trapped. He has 80,000 enemies in front of him and 250,000 coming up behind him. He is the meat in the sandwich. His generals advise him to retreat. "We cannot fight on two fronts," they say. Caesar refuses. Instead, he does the unthinkable. He orders his men to build a second wall. A wall facing outward to protect them from the relief army. He creates a donut of fortifications. He locks himself in with his enemy. For weeks, the Romans fight back to back. They are starving. They are exhausted. But Caesar is everywhere. He wears a bright red cloak so his men can always see him. He fights in the trenches with them. He calls them by name. He eats the same hard bread they eat. This is the psychology of shared suffering. A leader who sits in a tent is despised. A leader who bleeds in the mud is worshipped. When the final attack comes, the Roman line is breaking. The Gauls are pouring over the walls. It looks like the end. Caesar grabs a shield and a sword and charges into the breach himself. Seeing their general running toward death, the Romans find a reserve of energy they didn't know they had. They push back. They break the Gauls. Vercingetorix surrenders. Caesar wins against odds that were mathematically impossible. This victory was not just about walls, it was about resourcefulness. Caesar did not complain about the situation. He engineered a solution. He changed the geometry of the battlefield. The lesson here is simple. When you are surrounded, you do not panic. You build another wall. You innovate your way out of the death ground. But we cannot talk about Caesar without talking about the Rubicon. This is the moment that defines the psychology of decision-making. Caesar was ordered by the Roman Senate to disband his army and return to Rome as a civilian. He knew that if he did this, his political enemies would arrest him and destroy him. But if he marched his army into Italy, it was an act of treason. It meant civil war. He stood at the banks of the Rubicon River, the border of Italy. He hesitated. He understood the weight of what he was about to do. He turned to his generals and said, "If I cross this river, it means blood for the world. If I do not, it means my destruction." And then he switched off his fear. He said the famous words, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast. He crossed. He didn't look back. He moved with such speed that his enemies didn't have time to react. He captured city after city without fighting because the sheer audacity of his move terrified the Senate. They fled Rome. This is the psychological concept of the point of no return. Many people fail because they leave themselves a plan B. They keep a safety net. Caesar understood that true power comes when you burn the boats. When retreat is impossible, victory becomes necessary. The Rubicon moment is that split second where you stop analyzing and start acting. It is the death of hesitation. However, we must analyze his fall. Why did Caesar die? How could a man so brilliant be so blind to the knives sharpening in the shadows? The answer is hubris, and a specific failure of the law of power we discussed earlier, Law 15, crush your enemy totally. Caesar was famous for his Clementia, his mercy. When he won the civil war, he didn't execute his enemies. He forgave them. He forgave Brutus. He forgave Cassius. He gave them jobs. He invited them to the Senate. He thought this would make them love him. He thought gratitude would buy loyalty. He was wrong. Mercy to a wolf does not make it a dog. It just gives the wolf time to heal its teeth. These men despised him not because he was cruel, but because he was superior. His mercy humiliated them. Every time he forgave them, he reminded them that he had the power to kill them. He also stopped listening. He dismissed his bodyguards. He ignored the omens. A soothsayer warned him, "Beware the Ides of March." He laughed. On the day of his death, someone handed him a note detailing the assassination plot. He didn't read it. He put it in his pocket to read later. He believed his own myth. He believed he was untouchable. This is the fatal flaw of the apex mind. Success breeds complacency. You start to think the laws of gravity don't apply to you. You stop checking the corners. You stop watching the eyes of the men around you. Caesar conquered the world, but he couldn't conquer his own ego. So, how do you apply the Caesarian strategy to your life in the 21st century? First, adopt the pirate mindset. When you are in a weak position, act like you are in a strong one. If you lose your job, do not beg. Raise your price. Confidence is a bluff that becomes reality if you hold it long enough. Second, master, divide and conquer. If you are facing a massive problem, do not fight it all at once. Break it down. Isolate the variables. If you are dealing with a group of people who are blocking you, find the crack in their alliance. Feed the crack until it breaks. Third, build your Alesia. When you are overwhelmed, when the pressure is coming from all sides, do not retreat. Dig in. Outwork your enemies. Use engineering and systems to protect yourself. Be the hardest worker in the trenches. Fourth, identify your Rubicon. There is a decision you have been putting off. A business you want to start, a conversation you need to have, a move you need to make. You are hesitating because you want a guarantee of safety. There is no safety. Cast the die. Cross the river. Speed will cover your mistakes. And finally, learn from his death. Never assume you are safe. Never assume that your friends are loyal just because you helped them. In fact, be wary of the ones you helped the most, for they often resent the debt. Keep your eyes open, keep your guard up. Julius Caesar was a man who wrote his own story in blood and ink. He was a writer, a general, a politician, and a lover. He lived 10 lifetimes in one. He showed us that the limits of human potential are dictated only by the limits of our will.